Hi everyone, it's Laura here and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video I'm going to show you how to create a shadow box card using stamps by Gerda Steiner Designs. For the base of my shadow box I'm going to need two pieces of cardstock. This first one over here is 11 inches long and 4¼ inches tall. And then I have three score lines, the first one at ½ inch, the second one at 4¼ inches, and the third one at 4¾ inches. For the second piece of cardstock here, I cut some heavyweight white cardstock at 4¼ by 11 inches and trimmed off an ½ inch strip, and then I scored it at 4¼ inches. The first panel I showed, so the one with the three score lines, will be what will form my box in the shadow box card. And so I am now using a die by Studio Katia to cut an opening where I will have my scene peeking through on the inside of my card. And the nice thing about this die is that it will leave a dotted detail on my shadow box panel so that I have some more interest going on. And at this point my shadow box was kind of ready and I started working on my stamped images and on the scenes I want to create for the shadow box. The stamp set I am using today is by Gerda Steiner Designs and it's called I'll Rather Be With You. It features these adorable owls that I stamped with hybrid ink by My Favorite Things. That was the black licorice hybrid ink on some Nina Solar White 110 pounds cardstock, and now I am coloring them with my Spectrum Noir markers. I am using some browns to color in these images, and I started off by blocking out the areas on their bellies because I want them to stay lighter. And then I started adding shadow with the darker marker to the rest of the feathers. And as you can see on the owl on the right, I am shading everything as if the light is coming from the top left, whereas on the other owl, I am adding the shadows as if the light was coming from the top right of the screen. And the reason why I am doing this and I'm not really paying attention about having a consistent light source between the two images is that one will be on the outside of my card and the other one will be on the inside of my card. So once I have started laying down the shadows, I can blend them out towards the highlight with progressively lighter markers. And in this case, because the mid-tone and the highlight markers were all kind of similar to each other, I decided to come in with a second layer of color to intensify the contrast and get some richer shadows. So I started again with my MB4 marker, which is my darkest shade, and I applied it over the areas where I had added my darkest shadows before, and I also extended those areas a little bit because I wanted to darken up the image in general. And now I am using my MB3 marker to blend those areas out towards the mid-tone parts of the image. And I am going back and forth between the two until I get a blend that I like. I am being careful not to touch the highlight areas because for those I will come back in with my MB1, which is my lightest marker, because I want to make sure that those areas stay light so that I still have a lot of contrast going on between my highlights and my shadow areas. I am using some light browns to create more definition around the bellies of the owls. And I am adding some dots in order to create the feeling of a fluffy texture on their bellies. I am filling in the beaks and the feet of the owls with some oranges. And then off camera I colored in the branches and I also added a little bit more shading to the second owl on the left. And I didn't include that in the video because for the branches there isn't really a lot of shading going on or any specific technique. And for the owl I basically just repeated the same steps that I showed you before. The final touches are the leaves and a little bit of shading with some cool grays to the eyes of the owls, blending out those grays with my colorless blender, that's a Copic marker. And then once the coloring is over, I can go ahead and fussy cut my images. There are coordinating dies available for this set, but I don't have them, so I just simply cut the images with my EK Success Cutter B scissors. And in order to get a precise cut, I am first of all taking my time, and I am basically holding the scissors straight in my right hand, and rather than moving the scissors around the paper, I just move the paper with my left hand, and this allows me to get a more neat result. I cut all the images and then I went ahead and started working on the backgrounds. And I say backgrounds because I will be creating one that will go on a panel on the front of my card, and the other one will be for the inside portion of the shadow box card. The one I'm creating over here is for the card front, and for that I am using a cloud stencil by My Favorite Things and distress oxides that I am blending using these distress blending brushes. The colors I am using are fossilized amber, wild honey and fired brick, and I'm trying to create sort of an ombre effect from the bottom towards the top. And as you can see, I am rotating the stencil because each side has a different cloud shape, and this way I can get a lot of variation and interest on this background. And I have to say that these blending brushes are also really fun to use and create some very soft blends. To add a little bit of subtle shimmer, I am using Perfect Pearls in the color Perfect Copper, and I am applying them with the brush while my distress oxides haven't dried yet. And this way the Perfect Pearls will bind with the basically residual moisture that's still present in my distress oxides. In order to create a circular focal point out of this background, I used a die by Studio Katia, and this will die cut two pieces, a central panel and an outside frame. Because I want the sentiment to continue to hold the two die cut pieces together. And then I went ahead and die cut some brown cardstock using the same die. And I will be using just the frame part of it. And the reason why I taped together the two original die cuts, so the ones with the cloud, is that now once I am going to adhere this brown cardstock over my central focal panel, this portion here will be slightly raised with respect to the center. For the inside of my shadow box card, I created a similar background, so again I am using distress oxides and this cloud stencil by My Favorite Things, but this time I decided to use brighter colors, so I wanted to have a more fall, more muted scene on the outside of the shadow box card and something a little bit more bright and cheerful on the inside. So for this background here, I used peacock feathers and tumbled glass. Once I covered the entire panel with clouds, I added some shimmer to it by brushing Perfect Pearls in the color Perfect Pearl over the entire surface. For the sentiment on my shadow box, I decided to use the saying that reads, "Who is having a birthday?" and I am stamping it on what will be the front of my shadow box card. So this would be the panel with one score line only, and the side I am stamping on is the one that measures 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. So this is the larger of the two sides on this panel, and I am using black licorice ink by My Favorite Things. Because I want the sentiment to continue on the inside of my card, I am stamping the words "You Are" on a banner that I created out of some white cardstock that I die cut using a die by Studio Katia. And then I can start putting my shadow box together. As a very first step, I coated the back of the opening on the shadow box card with some acetate, and this is because the owl that I will glue on the inside will be hanging off the frame quite a bit, so I wanted something for it to stand on. And then I glued my blue cloudy sky so that it would create a background for my shadow box. At this point, I am ready to adhere everything together. So I have the panel with one score line, that is the one where I have stamped the sentiment, face down on my desk, with the smaller side to my right. I then took my other panel, that is the one that will form my shadow box. I added some double-sided adhesive along the flap. I aligned the flap to the score line on the other sheet of cardstock, and then I took what will basically be the front of my card. I folded it over and I made sure to press firmly so that it would adhere nicely to the flap. At this point, I flipped everything over and taped together the two loose sides on the back of my shadow box, making sure that the one with the blue sky would be on the inside. I decorated the front of my card using that circular background that I had previously created. I am gluing it more or less towards the center between the two sentiments using my Nouveau Deluxe adhesive. And then with the same glue, I am adhering one of the two owls, tucking the branch slightly under the brown frame. And then I glued the other owl, the branch, and the sentiment banner on the inside of my shadow box, using the acetate sheet as support. And here you can see the shadow box in action. It is really fun and not at all difficult to create, and I'm sure it will put a smile on the recipient's face. And that's it for today. If you guys enjoyed this video, please let me know in the comments below, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. You can visit my blog for the full list of supplies, and I'll catch you guys soon with the next one. Ciao!